Elizabeth, so what's your game plan now? What I understand the election will be in 2010?
There's an election in 2010. Well, I ran in 2008. It was a very brief race because I didn't become aware of all these facts until very late in the game. But it was a wonderful experience. I learned what's involved in running a race. We ended up. I became a bit of an expert in elections law. Ackerman filed fraudulent, really fabricated elections petitions for one of his third-party lines, and so I spent a couple of weeks up in Albany trying to get him off that third-party line, which was just sort of an eye-opener as to what goes on in the whole sphere of elections and the whole election petitions process. It's really much more involved than people can imagine, or than I even realized.
It's not only more involved; it can be also very dirty.
It can be dirty. It can be, but it's mostly it's work. I mean, it's getting up at 6, and I was out there at train stations, and unfortunately, a lot of most elections, I guess, in America, a lot of them are won or lost, with money, because it's very difficult to reach a district of 600,000 people by standing in train stations. But I did whatever I could. I didn't have a lot of money. There was very little time to raise it last time. It's very difficult for a non-incumbent to raise money because there are also these very strict limits on how much you can raise from any one person. So you have to be able to raise it from a huge number of people, and the people who usually give to campaigns have many of them had already reached their maximum limit. There's, I think, a 96,000 limit that you can give altogether to any campaign. The sum total of all your campaign contributions. So a lot of them who wanted to give to me couldn't give to me because they had already reached their maximum. So it was very hard. We had to work on a shoestring, but I had a lot of volunteers. A lot of people believed in what I was doing, and those other people have been following Ackerman much more closely and really disliked him. And we had about 30, very dedicated campaign volunteers. And every time I went out, there were people who said, that they were very unhappy with him. But it wasn't enough last time, and hopefully we can do more this time.
So what are you going to target in terms of both demographics and what I would call, I don't know what terms are, community leaders, that type of level? Where is your support? Where do you want your support to come from in order to make the break in the Ackerman machine?
Well, you really have to have the support come from all over, and you have to make people aware of his record. I mean, what I encountered when I went out, and I still encounter this, is, when you tell people about his positions on Israel and that he talked about Israeli intransigence or perpetrating pogroms or, any of the, even before that, before the last election, he talked about illegal outposts and the funding for the Palestinians. He was initiated funding not only in 2007 with his Ackerman and Bustani letter, but he had been doing that. He did that several times before. In the prior 5 years, he initiated several of the funding drives for the Palestinian Authority and for Mahmoud Abbas. When I tell people this, the initial reaction is shock. What, Ackerman? Isn't he Jewish? Sort of the same reaction I had when I first ran across the letter, and then started investigating what he was actually doing. People don't follow what their congressman is doing closely. The news media really doesn't pick it up, and what you do at Arutz Sheva is just a great service because a lot of the media doesn't pick things up. I spoke to a group, particularly important news about Israel. I spoke to a group Monday evening, and I started speaking about the Chaz Freeman appointment, and out of a group of 80 people, guess how many people had actually heard about it?
For our listeners who don't know, Charles Chaz Freeman has been appointed, it seems, to a very high national security level, council level type of a position, and he's been on the Saudi Arabian payroll, and a lot of bloggers and other media sites have noted a remarkably anti-Israel character type of remarks and stuff like that, which really shouldn't be for a man in a position that's sensitive. That's what Liz just mentioned now, Chaz Freeman.
Yeah, he was actually appointed to the National Intelligence Council, which is to chair the National Intelligence Council, which is the organization that prepares the National Intelligence Estimate. And the NIE, the National Intelligence Estimate, is what is used to determine a lot of foreign policy. And when there are mistakes or there are biases in that, it's really a problem. And he's also been on the payroll of the Chinese government, too, and basically said that we have to have self-examination of what America was doing with respect to 9/11. In other words, we're at fault for 9/11. Really has made some incredibly outrageous comments and very negative on Israel. And he was a proponent of the so-called Saudi peace initiative, which, as many of your listeners probably know, is an initiative which calls for Israel to go back to the 47 borders and not get anything in return.
No, we do get something. I think we get a couple of tens of thousands of refugees also they're going to dump on us, but that's that's our own problem, because we also have political problems with in democracy with any government, and everything is open. Liz, we're now down to our last 2 minutes.
Okay, but to answer my question about how many people had heard of it, out of this group of 80 people who I spoke to, nobody had heard about the Chaz Freeman appointment. So the biggest job is to get the word out. What is this guy's record? Let people know what his record is on the issues.
You have a website, that's right?
People don't know, and that's really the game plan. Try to let people know what's going on.
Your website, Liz, is?
Oh, it's Liz Berney for Congress.com, LizBerney for Congress.com.
One big word, right? One long word.
One long word.
That's right.
And, I'll be standing out there at train stations again, handing out leaflets and talking to people and going to grocery stores, which is what I did last time, and, trying to meet as many people as possible and speak and it's a lot of the concerns are even bigger now with the Obama administration, the Obama appointments, which are very, really upsetting.
Right. It's an indication that the direction is not exactly the way things should be going. More importantly for America, because, a lot of people say Israel, but actually it boils down to America making mistakes in weakening its allies and perhaps going. All right, we're going to close off here. We've been talking to Elizabeth Berney, who'll be running in 2010, and from now until then, for the 5th congressional seat in New York. And we wish you a lot of success. So we'll probably come back to you later in a couple of months and find out how everything has been, okay?
All right.
Liz,
thank you so much.
Thank you very much for being on the program.
Thank you.
Bye.